something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
I'm welcoming myself back. I just got back from this big European vacation with John. I just got engaged. Who does that when they're almost turning 70? But then again, who moves into a brand new house and signs up for a 30-year mortgage when they turn 70? I'm going to be 100 years old when I have this house paid off. So maybe my children will be paying it off. I don't know what's next, but I do know, and I take time to find out the steps that I'm making that are right for me and that I live in flow. And when I live in flow, I can craft that meaningful life. When I'm constantly pushing against the flow or swimming against the flow, I want you just to picture that if you're trying to swim against a current, how hard that is. But when you just relax and tune in to what is your personal flow, how easy life can be. It does not have to be tough. Now, we're going to go through tough things, and my guest and I are going to talk about that. But there is a point where you can be in flow and just relax and soak in all that life is meant to be for you. So welcome with me today, my guest today, Kristen Smith. Kristen, welcome.
Hi, how are you, Mary?
I'm awesome, and I'm so excited to have you on. You and I have been friends for quite a few years now, and I just love who you are. I love how you live your life, and I love the struggles. The thing that a lot of people who are our friends really probably may not know about us is that how parallel our lives have been, and that we have been through a lot of the same kind of stuff and learned those same lessons about surviving and thriving on the other end.
Yeah, I knew you were a kindred spirit from the start, right? It was one of those connections where our souls knew each other.
Yeah.
And without knowing a lot about you or your story, I had obviously heard quite a few amazing stories about you and the good you did in the community,
Mm.
but just didn't know you get hadn't gotten a chance to know you personally yet. And through some of our conversations, yes, we have lived through this some similar things, right? I mean, we're all on our own journey, and it looks a little bit different, but yeah, you're a kindred spirit.
Well, one of the things we can start here that I think is parallel for us to some degree. I mean, everybody has
Mhm.
their own journey, but that you were involved in a 10-year abusive marriage
Yep.
and found your path out and to healing, and then even past healing to thriving. So let's start there and let's talk about that journey for you and what that looked like and what lessons were there for you that you can share with the listeners that can help them whatever journey they're in.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, and you'd probably agree, looking back at the journey, there's so many more synchronicities in God's
Mm.
hands and different places where it was setting me up to be able to take the leap and exit, right?
Right.
Um, we prepare ourselves and our bodies and our minds and God, um, look for ways to set ourselves up and also at the same time
Mm.
protect pieces of ourselves while in these situations so that the time when the time is right, when we're able to um disconnect enough from our reality. And what I mean by that is when you're in an abusive relationship, um a lot of the time you're dissociated so that you're protecting what's yourself from what's really going on. I actually had a psychiatrist just the other day. I'm still in the middle of a custody battle with my ex-husband right now. Um, but I had our psychiatrist that was doing our evaluation ask the other day, why didn't you just leave? And even though I've gone through and walked with and been with a lot of women that were in my situation and they're in that situation now, there's not ever a straightforward answer,
Yeah.
right? It's at some point we're given a glimpse or we're given a look at what's really going on, and it's almost subconsciously that we decide we're on our way out. And then opportunities start lining each other up. And so for me, my ex-husband didn't cut me off from making money. I had always worked, which was a control of in itself, because I didn't have any control over the money, but he used it for his own benefit and to do things and
Mm.
controlled me in another way. But as soon as I had subconsciously made this decision, and it was actually after I actually do know when that happened. Um, there was a point at which he was very physical with me in front of my twins, who were at the time 2, and my daughter
Mm.
that was 3. And so um, I know that's when the switch happened. And from then on, my I was going through these steps and looking for these ways to better myself, right? It was so I worked in operations and mortgage and had at that point for 10 years. Um, and was like, do I go into sales piece? Because needing to make more money, I had capped out on the knowledge I could get in that position. I had capped out kind of everywhere.
Hmm.
And and you know, I couldn't survive on that income alone. So I needed to make a move to be able to open up my ability to make money, because subconsciously I knew I had to be able to make my own money. Um, I wasn't going to be able to depend on my ex-husband for that, because that was something he would use to control me from there on out.
So many women have that issue
Yeah.
of they don't know how they're going to support themselves financially.
Yeah.
And the fear of not having money
Hmm.
is, believe it or not, is bigger than the fear of staying and being physically abused and emotionally and verbal abused. So just think about that for a minute. The fear of not having money outweighs the fear of being physically abused.
It is. And what I will say to that is money is a tool. Money isn't everything.
Yeah.
When you are ready, you will leave everything behind. I walked away with like 10 articles of clothing.
Yeah.
You know, um, you will, when you're ready, you will be willing to leave everything. Um, and you know, I'm just going to say this. I did have my family as a support system. I was immensely lucky,
Yeah.
but I
That's
will,
huge.
right? I know. And I was lucky that they believed me right out of the gate, because
Yeah.
they actually didn't I didn't share with them. They didn't know anything. Because when you get married, you get married. You're not looking to get divorced. So you're not you're not saying in your head this marriage is going to fail, but usually by the time that barometer's turned up and you've dissociated and all of the things, and the abuse has turned up, and you're already numb to a lot of what has gone on.
Yeah, I think
And
that that's a big thing. You do
yeah,
become numb.
yeah,
What to the outside person looking in is like, what the heck? How can you let that go on? But
yep,
you've become numb to how dysfunctional it truly is.
right. And it becomes your normal, right? When something becomes your normal,
Yeah,
then it takes really big things to shake that, right? And when, a lot of us in that situation become these peacemakers, we're buffering the
yeah,
world from this
yeah.
person, right?
And
So,
from us, because
yeah,
like you said, you have this fairy tale of being married, and the last thing you want to do is say, oh, I was wrong, that was a big mistake, I didn't see it coming, he's actually a monster and I'm caught
right,
here. No woman
right.
wants to come up and say those things. They want to continue
No.
to try and make it right and make it right and
Yeah,
play the martyr and everything else, that we're so it's an awareness that I think, Kristen, that you and I need have a responsibility to bring to other women
right.
of what's happening in their lives, and that this really is normal, and
Well,
you
and
don't have to hide it anymore.
ex- 1,000%. It's not a shameful thing. One thing I want to add to that is the most brilliant women I know have come out of these situations.
Absolutely.
The most brilliant, kind, right? Kind, biggest heart, brilliant, smart, geniuses in their own right. Um, y- you've built an empire, right? I have lived more life in the last 8 years, Mary, than I did in those 10 years. I disappeared for 10 years. I disappeared, and I've lived more life in the last 8. I've doubled that. I've quadrupled that.
Yeah.
you know. Um I've quadrupled that life, and even I've gone through some excruciating things since, because the one thing, they will ramp up the abuse in any way to get that control.
They want that control back. You bet.
And you can expect that, but I will tell you, I would still not take back a minute of it.
I agree. Isn't that a crazy thing?
Mhm.
Because it was actually every single moment of that marriage and that growth cycle for me
Yeah,
that brought me to where I am today. I would not be
exactly.
this person. I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't have climbed Kilimanjaro. I wouldn't be doing life coaching. I wouldn't be doing any of those things if I hadn't have gone through all that crap before.
1,000%. There
Yeah.
becomes there become you gain a level of love and respect for yourself
Yeah.
through just even the leaving process, right? And and
Yeah.
and honestly, I have to give so much credit to God in that respect, because he ended up helping me escape in the middle of the night. He set up everything to where I didn't even know I was leaving that night. I didn't even know I was leaving that night because I had changed jobs and I was making more money, and that meant I had more demand on me. I was getting more phone calls. Okay? I was getting more phone calls after hours because that's when most of my clients were
Um,
available, right?
and an
I
abuser
saw that
doesn't
just
like you to
yes,
get those kind of calls. An
I saw that too.
abuser, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So all of a sudden he's out of town and I'm taking care of my babies and just put them down, and I get a phone call. What are all these texts and these phone calls? You're cheating on me. What are you doing? I can't believe that. Da just starts going off,
Yeah.
and it and in my case, my ex was looking for it because he was doing that. He was
Ah,
doing the same things. So he was looking for it to put back on me. But what happened is, and I have no clue why he did this. He called my parents, and they lived in Lehigh at the time, and I lived in Riverton at the time, and he says, "This is what's happening. I don't know what's going on with your daughter, this, that, and the other. I'm on my way right home, or I'm on my way home right now." Um, and it was at that point 11 o'clock at night. Um, and told them, I'm on my way to talk to her and I just don't know what's going on, and kind of tattling in a way,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but it piqued something in my parents' brain. They got to my they came to my door at about 12:30 at night, and I had just laid down. I was alone. So I'm thinking, "God, I don't know what's going on." They come to the door and my dad says, "You're going to go home with your mom. I'm going to stay here with your kids, because if he comes home and your kids are gone, he's coming after us." Um,
Wow.
and I went, and I never went back.
Wow.
And all the things that had been subconsciously put into place in the I had only gotten that new job 8 months earlier. And I had the potential to make quite a bit more money. And so just in those 8 months, the fail safes that were put
Mm.
into place for me, that only looking back can I go, there's God's hand,
Ah,
there's God's hand, there's God's hand, there's God's hand. You know, I can't, as Courtney Brown likes to say, you can't make this shit up.
you can't make this shit up. That is exactly her favorite phrase. Yeah.
Yeah,
The interesting thing about an abuser or in an abusive relationship that's doing that, what you will find is and this is in every case I've seen this, what they are accusing you of and that they're afraid you're doing is 100% always the exact fears that they have about themselves, that they
exactly.
are
It
doing,
is.
that they are committing. And so they project that onto you and everyone else around them, that
Yeah.
you must be doing this because those are the things happening inside of them.
Oh, a
It's
thousand percent.
interesting. Yeah. I want to go back for just a second
Yeah.
and talk about something. And I think that this is a great topic. I don't talk about this particular piece of it with many people.
Yeah.
But can I just say I'm dumbfounded with the question that your psychiatrist asked you? And
Yeah.
I would have found that so offensive. The question of, well, why didn't you just leave? What kind of a question is that for a psychiatrist to ask? Because it could have been
Yeah.
asked in other ways. What things were keeping you there?
Well, this was a
Or
little bit. Yeah.
anything else, but why didn't you just leave? That's like
Yeah.
saying to a girl who's been raped, why did you go to that party? I mean,
Right.
there's so much more to the story than this black and white thing of, well, you were being abused. Why didn't you just leave?
Well, unfortunately, Mary, and I think that you've probably experienced this to some extent too. And this situation was just a little bit different because I was going through a psych eval for a custody
Oh,
evaluation.
okay.
So she asked it just in a like, were you being isolated? Why weren't you giving people more information? Like, how did it take 10 years, right? If
Okay.
if
So
this was
she was
how bad it
trying to
was.
open up the conversation.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
I
she
get
was
that.
trying to just kind of understand the severity without asking too many questions to be able to then become biased, I guess. But your question is valid because there is so much victim blaming in this,
Yeah.
especially when everybody jumps to the conclusion that the person that leaves is at fault.
Yeah.
The person that
Crazy.
leaves the situation is at fault. And you know, there was it's crazy. He had cheated on me quite a bit during our relationship, and he would tell me about this much of it so that I wouldn't go looking for more, right? And I was like, "Oh, he has integrity. He's actually telling me
Oh,
these things." But it was another tactic to just keep me held.
yeah.
Because but for most of our relationship, because of the sexual abuse, that's another thing within marriage that I wish was just talked about a little bit more.
Mm,
The amount you don't have to be raped to be sexually abused in your marriage.
yeah.
um it's that's actually a really, really, really rough one, because that has so much more
Yeah.
entangled with it than some of you know what the
Mm,
like the physical is um more acceptable to explain away, right? I was waiting for him to cheat on me again to leave, right? And that shoe just never dropped. Was waiting for that other shoe, because then people would understand why I was leaving. It was harder to explain that, yes, I had been mentally, physically, emotionally, verbally, physically, all these abuses, but they're not seeing a black eye. They're not seeing a broken arm. They're not seeing cops at my
yeah.
house. So then well, I had my very, very, very best, one of my very best friends tell me I was a liar.
Ah,
Um, and it, it was okay, because she wasn't ready for it. And
mm,
that's okay. Um, I was luckily, like I said, I was lucky. I had 100% of my family believe me, even though they were going through their
yeah.
own struggles with it. You know, my mother being like, "What? We have a really good relationship. We're open. Why didn't you tell me?" And
Yeah.
just, I don't have that answer. We would have loved you through it. I know that. I 1,000% know that.
For me, when I think about why I didn't ever share those things with any of my family, my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, even my close friends, my girlfriends, no one,
Yeah,
is because if I was in a relationship that was that bad, then that said more about me
yeah,
than about my husband.
yeah,
And I didn't want to shine a light on all the levels and things that I didn't measure up in. And how many times I was told, you know, that I was this and I was that, and that, on the sexual side, that no one would ever, ever want to touch you, or no one would ever, and then I'm the only one that will ever accept you in bed, and blah, blah. And so you
yeah,
begin to have that feeling of like, I'm worthless.
yeah,
And I darn well better stay here because no one else will want me. As bad as it is
yeah.
here, at least it's someplace.
Right. Yeah. It, there is even though you're in survival mode, to an extent, your needs are being met, right? And so, but yeah, the whole, the layering, that stuff isn't true, but what if?
Yeah.
And then the layering, and you've probably experienced this as well, Mary. It takes the unlayering then, right?
Yeah.
Right. And I'm in the custody battle right now with my ex-husband, because I gave him 50-50 custody, because at the time I'm like, those are his kids. He's not going to be abusive to them.
Ah.
So it's taken an unlayering for me to find my center to be able to go, no matter what this looks like, I will stand up wholeheartedly for my kids, because the only thing with them I have control over is that they know they are loved,
Mm.
and that they know that I am willing to do anything to keep them safe.
You know, one thing I know that you've said before, Kristen, that I think is such a profound statement, and as we shift from the heaviness of living in this kind of abusive relationship
Yeah.
to then getting out,
Mm-hmm.
that I've heard you say so many times, you are only one choice away from a new life.
Yeah. Yep.
So talk to me about that, because that is so uplifting, that I'm only one choice away from a new peace that I want.
You are. It just even takes asking. You know what I mean? Like, I've had so, even myself, we get shamed into even not asking for what we need, because what we need doesn't matter, right?
Mm.
So, like I said, I had my family as amazing support. But even if you don't have family as amazing support, there's there's a family of women, right, Mary?
Yeah.
We have a family of women and men, like our significant others. Oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
they are godsends within themselves. They are amazing. Ama- wow. I don't have words for, there's really good people out there, and they want to help you, and they're waiting to help you, and all you have to do is ask. As And I know how hard that is. I know how freaking hard that is. But there's mostly good
Yeah.
people out there. There's
Totally.
mostly good people. Um, but you know, the one the decisions that I just made one at a time, that were in my best interest from my highest self, and just asking along the way, just let me know. Let me know. Give me a sign. And you can ask for the most specific sign. Like with that job I was talking to you about, I was like, it's either this or that, God. Like, if it's supposed to be this, it needs to look exactly like this. Guess what showed up? It looked exactly like that.
It's
Be
called
specific.
designing your life. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. It it's the magic, right? It's give me a sign that I am supposed to be here and what I'm supposed to do. And if I'm supposed to just sit, if it is not my time, give me a sign too. Like, um during this custody battle, my intuition has ramped up big time, because I've
Yeah.
needed it. I've
Yeah.
needed it. But one of the things I got really, really good at doing was asking for the signs. And that a lot of that does come from my time of leaving and looking back and gaining confidence off of, you were able to do this, you were able to do this, you were able to do this. You've lived through 100% of your hardest days. I can throw out all the sayings, but all you have to do is make that that one next decision. What's the next best decision right now? And do that. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be 5 years ahead. It doesn't even have to be 10 minutes ahead. What, you know, am I laying, does my body need rest today, or do I need a bath? I mean, it can just be as simple as that. Or, I'm waiting for someone. I need to talk to someone, and you're sitting there waiting for someone to reach out to you. Reach out. If you
To
need
them.
something,
Yeah.
reach out. You are your own best friend and worst enemy. Like, you have all the control in the outcome. You have all the control, and you have all the people around you rooting for you to live your life and thrive. And no one's been through what you've been through. You're the only one that can make those decisions for you. But I mean, through that one thing, that that one just making the next right decision, I've done things I've never thought I would
Right?
ever accomplish. I led a group of women in this state to building the first all-women labor-built construction house in the state. And now we have a Girl Scout patch named after us. We have a children's book that funds equity and inclusion
Oh,
in
that's awesome.
over the United States. We have, you know, we have scholarship money to actually put women into trade programs, uh, graduates, moms, all women. Um, it's I never thought I had the lieutenant governor say to us that she expected to be impressed by the house, but she never expected to be inspired, and
Ah,
with
how
tears
beautiful.
running down her face.
Yeah.
And you know, that that wasn't that wasn't Kristen before. I had that in me. I 1000% had that in me. But the I finally got to live. I finally got to make a decision for myself, and every decision thereafter has been such a big gift.
You know, with that saying, I think is so true that that which you persist in doing becomes easier. And then
Yeah.
not only easier, it becomes yours.
Yeah.
Things that I never in my world thought I would do that I did. And the first, like, as simple as going to the gym for the first time, which
Yeah.
is like, was the hardest thing, one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. And
And now
now
you're one
I'm
of
like
the
a gym,
buffest woman I've ever.
I'm a gym
Right.
rat, okay? But I persisted in doing it.
Yeah.
And things that used to make me so afraid, or that I was afraid of, they didn't make me afraid. They have no
Yeah.
power to make me afraid. But that I was afraid of, for example, of heights.
Yeah.
I fell off of a slide in first grade and fell all the way down.
Oh,
And
and those
since
slides
that,
are high.
and since then, I was just always scared to death of heights. I couldn't walk next to a window that looked down or anything.
Hmm.
And then one day I decided, wait a minute, I'm not afraid of those heights. That's
Yeah.
just something I've built up inside of me. And
Yep.
then, I climbed Kilimanjaro and I just got home from that cruise vacation on a sailboat, one of the tall mast things.
Yes.
And when I had the opportunity to climb the mast up the ropes, I was like, dang, it
Oh
wasn't
my
even
gosh.
fearful at all to me.
That is
And that was
fantastic.
because I had persisted
Yep.
in doing that which I was afraid of
Yep.
until I wasn't afraid
Yep.
anymore.
Yeah,
And that
because
really
it's
is possible.
it's about that perseverance, not perfection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That will to that will to live is still strong in all of us. Um, that light is still strong in all of us. Um, there might be something that's just, you know, dampening the light, right? The layers, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's still there, even when you don't feel like it is. And I realized, you know, there was one day where I was going through a lot of stuff with, or a period where I was going through a lot of stuff with my body, and it pushed me to read the book The Body Keeps Score. The minute I read that, I had so much perspective and grace for what my body did to protect me during those times.
Yeah.
And the thing that he my he had tried to use against me was my heart. I have always had a really, really, really big heart, and I love to serve. I've always loved to serve. I got that from my parents. Um, and I had realized that the dissociation was so that it could protect my heart.
Uh,
so
Sure.
that, a lot of the stuff that is done or that happens that our body does is to protect us and to protect the best parts of us, right? And those don't go away.
Right.
They might be dampened. They might be quieted for a minute because they're not safe right at the minute, but they're not gone. And
They're not gone.
they're not even lessened, if that makes sense. They're just being protected.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, uh, you are a woman who exemplifies someone who has taken your pain and in that pain turned it into your purpose.
Yeah.
And so, share with me a little bit about how that happened and how that pain became your purpose.
Yeah. Um, you definitely got to lean in. You can't run away from it. um, and I say that because right when I did leave, when I didn't know all the stuff that was coming up at me, I did turn to alcohol for a little bit because, and that came on very slowly, but after a while, it was to the point where I was using it. It was painful, you know. My body and my mind were ready to look at the things like we left. Let's go, and it was really really painful. Um, because some of the stuff that had been dampened was starting to fight its way out.
Ah,
And so, um, but even in that, I finally looked at it and said, now I'm punishing myself. I'm punishing myself now. That's not fair. I'm punishing myself now for having gone through all these things, and even though it wasn't my fault and I didn't necessarily do these things to me, it was my responsibility to heal. And so I took out all the stops. I hired myself a personal trainer. um, I got I hired a life business coach. I was just like, we are throwing everything at this right now because
mm,
I can't stay here. This is not me. I had to go to the 4 agreements. I had to be impeccable with my word to myself. I was
mm-hmm.
I was betraying. I was betraying myself, you know, by the actions I was taking to just feel okay.
Mm.
So I started replacing those, and I got little by little I got stronger. And as I got sober, I got stronger, and I was able to develop self respect for myself. So even though there was still that voice of my ex and even ourselves in my head going, "Oh, you're still not there. You're still not good enough." I was doing some really big things to then look back on and go, "No, that's not little.
Mm.
That's huge. You need to look at this. You get to respect where you've been because your story is going to help somebody get through theirs."
Absolutely.
And as right, and you've probably had this experience where people have come into my life, women have come into my life, and even if I've had this much for them,
Mm.
it's catapulted me that much further into going, this is why that was worth it. If I can shine that flashlight into somebody's life just even a little bit, giving them a moment or a glimpse of hope in this, then that's worth it. Then that's okay. So then I started going through that healing process, even physically, and I started seeing where I was healing stuff even for my kids, or I was identifying things that I was going through that I could also mirror and see my own kids going through at the time. And I realized, oh, I need to do this and experience what they're experiencing and know this so deep that on the other side I can catch them. That they'll see mom do the work and they'll see her be okay and they'll feel the peace that she's come to. And there was days I never thought I could find the peace in the chaos. Even days where
Yeah.
you've known me, you know, and and they can feel that and just know it's different without me even having to say anything.
They feel that shift in the energy inside of you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and
Children, more than anyone, can read that in their parents, no matter how much their parents think they can hide that. Children are total vibration readers.
And it doesn't do anything, and it doesn't do any good to hide it from them. You don't have to be raw and real and gritty and nasty. Like, you don't have to give all the details, but they're going to go through things, and if they know that you've been through things, they're going to trust that they can come to you without shame, without criticism, without labeling, without judgment, with all of the allowing and love, and go, I saw you. I need that too.
You know, I think that as our children watch that and our friends watch that,
Hmm.
and as we watch that, there is such strength, such becoming and realizing who we are inside.
Yeah.
There's so many more things I want to talk to you about, Kristen, but our time's getting so short. But I want to end with this thought that we've been talking about pain.
Yeah.
And you talked about that book, Feelings Buried Alive Never Die.
Yeah.
And pain is such an interesting teacher.
It is.
We avoid pain like the plague, but pain can be the best teacher we've ever had, as long as we don't ignore it. On my plane trip over to Europe, actually on the way home, I watched a movie that really disturbed me, and to the point that afterwards I had to quickly watch a comedy to just not
I've done that
fall
before.
into this. But it was a movie called My Son,
Oh.
and in the end, the son commits suicide, and that's how the movie ends. But
Yeah.
at one point in the movie, the father realizes that the son always wears long sleeves if in the heat of summer, and so he asks to see his arms, and he's been cutting himself.
Yeah.
And the father just says, I demand that you stop. You will not do that. You, my son, will not cut yourself. I'm thinking like, okay, that works. That totally works. You just keep saying that. You know what I mean? It
Yep.
doesn't.
No.
But the son said something very interesting. It's something I've known for a long time. He said, when I cut myself, it allows me to focus on this pain
Right.
and not feel the pain that is inside of me. And
Oh.
that is such a profound thing. So many times we do things like, for example, getting involved in alcohol or all sorts of things
All sorts of
that
things. Yeah,
allow
there's
us
a lot.
to keep the pain masked here and focus over here so we don't have to look at this.
Yeah.
And as long as we do this, this ain't going away. Like you said, it doesn't matter what you put on top of it or how many layers. This is not going away ever.
Well, you can't put lipstick on a pig, right?
And so you and I have both learned how to begin to peel those layers away
Yeah.
and shine a light so that that pain felt that there was a safe place
Yeah.
to come out and be shown and
Yeah.
then be healed.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
that's the safety I want my listeners to find from listening to you and to me this day,
oh
is
yeah.
that that pain can be healed when it's allowed to see the light of day.
1,000%. You know, it turns into a time where I almost run at pain now because I have been shown so many, and you talked about him cutting, and that's where I got to stand up for my daughter, is because that was my first sign that she was in crisis and that enough was enough. And sorry.
It's all right. It's all
But
right. We get
I
real on this
yeah.
podcast. We get vulnerable. We show the emotions.
I appreciate it. I do. Um, but I have seen so many beautiful things on the other side of the worst of this, that I can't deny that any of it isn't for a reason, that any of it
Right.
doesn't have its purpose, and that within that, I can't help heal my friend or have empathy or hold space when I haven't been there, you know? And some of us get a bigger job to do of that than others, and that's okay. Embrace it. Because it's the duality. The ugliest, most hurtful, saddest things you will ever experience, the other side is true.
They are the most beautiful things that you will ever experience.
Yeah. And so to say that I have found the most peace within the most excruciating points in my life, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It does get better. And it's kind of like a refiner's fire. It just does. It just keeps getting better.
And we get stronger.
Yep.
And
Yep.
there is a way out.
There is.
That's the message that I hope that everyone has taken from this today, Kristen, is that there is always hope.
There is always
And
hope.
the hope is where it starts. And then we take what you talked about, the first step, that first choice that leads to the next choice and the next choice. But you'll never find that over there if you don't make the first one here.
Yep.
And then about how the pain can actually lead you to a great purpose in your life.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you and I have connected in our sisterhood,
Me
our
too.
friends, that we all are involved in this. There's about 20 of us who just hang in this circle of friends that support and love each other and
A lot of
use
beautiful
each other
people.
to create this beauty for the world. So thank you. Thank you for your vulnerability.
You're welcome. I appreciate everything. I love you so much, Mary, and thank you for
Vice
who
versa.
you are. And it very much takes people being honest and open and transparent and living fully into themselves to give other people permission.
Yeah.
Here's your permission.
It's just kind of why I started this podcast, to help me craft my meaningful life. And then as I walked through my mess, that would give courage to people that they could walk through theirs as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Thank you for being with us, Kristen, and your
Thank you,
beautiful,
Mary.
beautiful soul that is just like emerging like this beam of light, you beautiful thing.
Well, we're a mirror for each other, my friend.
Yes. And so until next time, my listeners, may you be about crafting your meaningful life. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a Meaningful Life with Mary Crafts.